Greetings, viewers, colleagues, friends. Welcome to the springtime. We are enjoying this moment here in South Africa. I'm not sure about you, wherever you are in the world. This is our monthly show, the General Management and Leadership Development 101 Conversation. This is the show that focuses closely into specific sectors of our economy with a special guest. My hosts, co-hosts, my colleagues, Divesh and George are here. How are you doing, colleagues? I'm looking forward to this day as always. And of course, our special guest. My name is Sam Tima. For those who don't know me, I am the producer, and we are presenting this show through our COMETSA Global Online Channels, the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. That is my opening remarks. I hand over to my colleagues to welcome you, welcome our guests, and start our conversation. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome to the viewers and the listeners out there. And as Sam said, this is the COMETSA Global Online Channel, and the show you're watching is General Management and Leadership 101. I'm your host, Divesh Motilal. For those who don't know me, I'm a seasoned engineer. I've worked in excess of 10 years in the government sector, private sector, as well as in the non-profit organizations. I've worked in numerous sectors, including renewable energy, sustainable development in the transport sector. I've worked in the non-profit organizations developing societies in terms of some of the challenges that we've been facing. So I'm not just a technical engineer per se, but I look at improving the societies in which we work. My host, George, I'll hand over to him. He can give himself a brief introduction. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Davis, and thank you, viewers, for joining us today. We have the pleasure and honor, I'm telling you, of hosting Hlubi here. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for agreeing to join us. Hey, as you know, I'm an executive and business coach, life coach, and I look to get the best out of you when we have an engagement. But today, we want to hear from the best to tell us how she got there, what she's doing now. I can't wait. I'm truly excited. Welcome, Hlubi, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, as Sam said, in the universe. The rose amongst the thorns. So I'm very excited to be here today. Briefly before we start, it's always such a pleasure for me and always a journey of curiosity to speak and converse with different kinds of people from all walks of life, especially in conversations where I'm going to leave inspired and I'm going to leave with access to different networks. And that's what I love about really people and the places in which we operate and knowing that we actually are a global community. So I'm very excited about the conversation today.
And thank you, Hlubi. And today's show, we're looking at partially the entertainment sector. Of course, many of our viewers might know our guest, Hlubi Mboya-Arnold, an award-winning actress, social entrepreneur, civil rights activist, philanthropist, adventurer, athlete, scholar, rebel at heart, devoted wife and mother. So although it's just 2 lines and I could talk a lot more about our special guest, I just want to welcome Hlubi once again. It's such an honor to be really talking to you. And I know my introduction doesn't do justice, but I would rather we get into the conversation and, instill some of that excitement that you have with our viewers. So just to kick off, you grew up in Rustenburg, became a TV personality, and although Rustenburg may not be seen as a township, it's well known for one of the fastest growing areas in Africa. Can you tell us about your story, about the aspect of your life, that journey, and so that potential young people out there might be inspired by to follow in your footsteps?
You want the clean version or the Hlubi version? First and foremost, and everyone always gets this wrong. When we talk about Rustenburg, I actually should clarify in my bio that it's not Rustenburg in our Northwest. It's actually Rustenburg Girls High School in Cape Town, KwaLanga. So I'm a Cape Townian from the Western Cape. I'm born and bred where I was raised, but my roots and my heritage is from the Eastern Cape and Alice. So I'm close.
Oh my goodness, that is really so important clarification. I have placed you in Rustenburg. Actually, when I asked you where you are this morning, I expected you to say you are in the Northwest. Thanks, George, for us allowing her to clarify this. This is beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I had a wonderful childhood growing up. My parents are both academics, but my grandmother, and I think that's where I get the entrepreneurial spirit from. Back in the day, KwaLanga, she was a township entrepreneur, and we grew up in the sense of going to the shop where she sold household goods, furniture, you name it. And as a Black woman those days, that was unheard of. And that's how we grew up, working over weekends, being known in the township, KwaLanga. These are the kids who parents or whose grandmothers own the shop. So the entrepreneurial spirit and my work ethic, because I started working at a very young age, and I'm blessed, and I know now the power and the value of that as an adult. And that was my childhood. And then, as you said, Devesh, Rustenburg Girls High School was where I grew up, and it was a Model C school, and I'm 43 years old right now. So back in the day, you can imagine I was the first black girl in an all-white school. So that had its advantages and disadvantages. But it gave me a really a unique voice as the woman that I am today. And then came the University of Cape Town, which was my undergrad BSOC-SCI, Bachelor of Social Sciences, Humanities. And in my third and final year, that's why I asked the gentleman here, do you want the clean version or do you want the Hlubi version? So in my third year, majoring in third world politics and labor law, listen to this, Devesh. I saw Sherelle de Villiers. I was watching Isidingo on campus. I saw Sherelle de Villiers and I said, I need to be there. I need to be there. I wasn't studying arts and drama, but colleagues, I packed my bags, and this is my tenacity of following my heart and everything that I do. I packed my bags knowing that my parents would be disappointed as Black parents. You know how hard it is to send your kids to university. The dreams that they had for me, I packed my bags in my third and final year. I couldn't even wait for graduation to follow my dream of being an actress. And that's where my story begins.
That is really inspiring, and I can honestly say that looking and following your activities over the years, that power of your grandmother's influence, as well as Sherelle de Villiers, I mean, that's another fascinating woman that I've also encountered in my life. She's very inspiring, and that shows as well in the initiatives that you are going through. One of the recent highlights that I wanted to just chat about in your career in the entertainment industry in particular is your movie that's currently streaming on Netflix, I Am All Girls. Movie deals with a very sad but real problem we face not only in South Africa but also in the world, and it's based on the true story, true events of things that's happened in our past, probably still happening, but you've tackled a very topical project, and I would like to know what's your personal experience, not only with the theme of the movie, but how was it like working with a global mega brand like Netflix?
I've had conversations with people from across the world because of that global platform. I think that initially the film Sam and George was supposed to be pre-COVID. So we were expecting it to go to Ster-Kinekor New Metro. Then COVID hit, and as we all know, the barriers to that. But it was a complete blessing in disguise because we wouldn't have had the access to the international platform and the media and the reach and the impact that that movie had on a global scale. And once again, I always come back to the humanities. And that's why I will always value that 3 years that I spent at UCT. The humanity and social sciences are the backbone of everything that I do. And I think now in 2021, it's being revealed to us how important that is in our societies today, as COVID has released and revealed so many injustices and it literally being slapped in our faces. So that's our foundation of academia being BSOC side and third world politics, which is very relevant in my life because I believe I'm very political through my art, as you know, and as that story tells. And as Unandip, an HIV positive character, breaking boundaries, being the first HIV positive character, talking about stigma, talking about living positively with HIV/AIDS, social justice and activism and civil rights are the core of my work. And that's the kind of legacy that I want to leave behind. And I always say in interviews, Sam and George, I tend to gravitate, and I don't know if it's a gift or a curse. I speak to my ancestors all the time and say, hey, slow it down, you know? But I know that media for me is for me to use it and not to be used by it. And that's where I really want to be. And that's where I want to always choose the particular roles and particular activities and people that I want to align myself with. It's very important to me that I'm very clear about that, of where I stand and what I'm trying to convey as a Black woman in Africa, but as a human being most and foremost.
Well, I wanted to say that this is music in my ears to have someone who's so connected with the profession that they have chosen and so passionate about it and put it in the right perspective, that there's no profession that is irrelevant. So, and I like the point you raised that the social sciences and humanities, that's who we are. And just thank you for doing that, because a lot of people that they listen to people saying to them that you have chosen this particular direction of studies, but the industry wants this. Who says so? You can make that wanted by the industry by the way you package yourself and position it to the industry. This is a beautiful story that you are sharing here, Divesh. I'm sure you do the same to engineering. Some people say, but which bridges are you going to be building? You know, engineering is science. It's not just about building the bridges. George will tell you about law as well. Every one of us are affected by law. And so I just wanted to interject there to say that that we need to live our professions and make them real and practical to the day-to-day lives that we are living. Thank you for doing that.
And but Sam, just to add on that, I believe that I do a lot of things as we unpack, the conversation. And sometimes I get a lot of imposter syndrome because we say, I'm an actress. Oh, I can't go into business. Oh, I can't go into engineering, and I think that is nonsense. I believe that you never start from scratch. We're constantly building and building for the next level of our life. And for where I'm at now, which we will discuss later, doing my MBA, it's such a beautiful journey because that BSOC side helped me and it gave me such a great foundation. So you never start from scratch. You're just building and constantly building and elevating yourself for the next level of your life.
They say the wisest scientist could never tell you what you're capable of. You are capable of what you want to be capable of. And so achievement is in the head. And so I'm really impressed with your energy, your passion, and your belief that you can do whatever you want to do. And I see that translating into your relationship with the girls that you mentor. Maybe can we hear a bit more about that?
I have to be reflective in my work as the woman I see in the mirror. So yes, I'm a feminist, but I dig deeper with George. I'm an intersectional feminist because it's about Black woman narrative. And I cannot ignore that. And as much as we have, as a collective, as women, we have barriers and our heartaches and our divisions. I think Black women, I take a deep dive into that narrative. So it was hard for me being an actor in the industry for 20 years because there were barriers to entry, patriarchy, equality and equity within the film industry. And I had to say that it's not about me, it's about making sure that young girls coming behind me don't have to go through that. And I'm not saying I'm trying to fast track people's careers because I've learned a lot from the heartache. It's shaped me and it's built me a great character traits that I will forever hold very close to my heart as a badge of honor. But there's some things my little young girls really don't have to go through. And as a social entrepreneur, there are so many barriers to entry when it comes to women entrepreneurship and Black women entrepreneurs on the African continent. So I've got to create spaces collectively with other women and Black women to be able, and safe spaces in particular, to be able to create access and mentorship and tools and solid vetting for training and development and mentorship, so that it doesn't have to be that tough, so that we lose high potential legends because it was just there was no way into it and no way that we can have a fruitful and successful career as Black women in any industry. So I'm very, very passionate about that.
Thank you, Hlubi. One of the things that I try to do with our show is we're talking leadership, but we don't want to talk textbook leadership. And the types of things you are sharing, those gems that you are giving to our viewers and listeners is exactly what I've been looking for. And I find that your experience in the social side of academia, but also your life experiences, those are the things that really bring out the good leadership qualities that you do possess. And that is giving you that opportunity to take your leadership and the skills and experience and share that with other people that you engage with. But still, to get to that point where people take you seriously, it's your art as an entertainer that elevated you to a certain level where then people take you seriously. Otherwise, a lot of the artists in our country, around the world, they're really good at their craft, but not given those opportunities. If they keep hitting those barriers that you mentioned, they never really aspire to the levels that they could actually aspire to. But if we talk about your craft, your character that you portrayed, you mentioned in the Sidingo, Nandipa, she still resonates with me quite strongly, and it's still relevant even in this day and age. You've done a lot of work to chip at that barrier that's there, although it's still there. But for me, what's interesting to know from you is this shy young lady starting out as an HIV positive maid, and then she grows in that character, showing people the potential that you can reach a different level in your life, not to get stuck. So she grows into being a powerful, successful woman in that show, much like yourself. And the latest character for me, when I watched the movie I Am All Girls, Ntombi, very silent, very crafty, emotionally scarred, but very deadly and focused. And I was wanting you to share with us, how do you capture your own passions, emotions? You've spoken on some of these issues, and you portray them into these characters. I mean, if the people see that movie, and I recommend it, not only from a entertainment level, but in terms of an eye-opener, in terms of what actually was happening, what actually is happening. It's very scary. So can you share with us how you actually capture your emotions, your passions, and put them into your characters? I mean, you've had in excess of 13 movies, shows over the span of the 20 years, and I'm sure you're going to be in more of them, and share this message and this passion that you have with viewers out there. But for now, can you share with some aspiring artists how you actually capture those passions?
From your lips to God's ears, bring in the work. Bring in the work. I'm a gut actor. As I told you, I studied third world politics and labor law. So I'm not a trained actor. I rely heavily on instinct, which once again is an expression and a sharing of a piece of me to the world when I do my art. Hence, I think the gravitas of the work that I do, because it can only take that to not only just be a film for entertainment, but for edutainment, because I love having a great message or an important message in my art. It just catapults it into another level. And it makes me feel that I've done what I needed to do, you know? And it's okay for me to live a life that people don't understand. You know, people have always said, Hlubi, why are you always doing these kind of roles? And I'm like, they come to me, you know? But at the same time, Dev, I'm a bubbly human being, you know, so there is pieces of art that I do that are light and joyous and fun and non-serious and comedic, which is good for my spirit and soul as well. We can't always just be, you know, so intense, you know. We have to show the full balance of who we are. And as much as serious as I take a lot of my issues, there's a big fun side to me, a big relaxation side to me. So it's very important for me as a creative to be disciplined and relaxed, to be focused and take the hands off the wheel, to be generous, but still have very strict boundaries. So I hope you experience me, Sam and George and Devesh, in my entirety as a human being. It's not just the hardcore, dark, intense, you know, social, political stuff. There is the sunshine and the sunlight and the warmth and the love. And the peace.
I must confess that the first time we connected this morning, your energy and your passion and who you are just immediately struck me. And I was like, wow, this is such a natural person. Because I'm a coach, as George is coach as well. And we always have this question mark, you know, when you're going to meet somebody for the first time, you're always interested in imagining how the person is going to show up. And indeed, you showed up the way you are now. And it's really beautiful. And I hope with you, as I experience you, as I experienced you that way, and I just wanted to confess that was something that really remained with me. And I said, oh, this is indeed an actor. But you are more than an actor. You are who you are, and acting has found you.
I
receive that. I receive that.
I really must concur. The first, it's the energy levels that are very high. And what it does is that those energies are then reflected in everyone else around you. And so we're so grateful. Can I just ask something? Because from what you were saying, 20 years in the game, you talked about ups and downs. I'm sensing persistence in there. Persistence as a trait, as a quality. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that to those who are young and looking at you and saying, wow, one day I want to be Hlubi?
But George, I always say to young people, old people, everyone that I meet. I've cried a lot of tears in this industry. I'm getting emotional. It's a very few percentage of actors in the world that can say it was an easy road, that I've made it, I've arrived, you know? Just like resilience with George, I don't think it's a character trait. It's a muscle that we use. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And I think the tough times create tough people. So when you say persistence, yeah, I'm that. Because I've got stories to tell, and I'm very authentic in my storytelling, because these young people see these houses and Instagram and the cars. I'm like, that's not the truth of the situation. That's a very, very few percentage of people. And the best of us, we barely are surviving, especially during COVID. So there are still lots of kids who want to get into the space. And I'm like, I've got friends who are starving right now as pure and strict creatives. And it breaks my heart because they cannot feed their families. There is no work because of what the pandemic has done globally. And I'm very blessed and privileged because, Devesh, I had foresight that academia and being an entrepreneur has given me options of various sources of income, George and Sam. And so one thing I can say is that don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say in investment. Diversify. You know what I mean? Because that means that, okay, things have stopped right now or are not as consistent, or the auditions aren't coming in, the studios have shut down. I can still be able to fill my family in a certain ways by doing piece jobs and other kind of work. So it's not that anything is less of a passion than my arts, but I've realized I can be creative in any space and anywhere and anyhow that I travel in. And that makes me, with George, very unique in non-artsy industries. Because when I go into MBA class, I'm like, there's engineers here, there's scientists here, blah, blah, blah. I'm the only creative. I'm like, Hlubi, that might be an imposter syndrome. But remember, I stick out like a thorn because I'm a creative. So I will bring things to those conversations. I will bring things to those strategies that nobody else can bring. And that has made me very successful. And that has made me stand out in my businesses because it's something that hasn't been done before. It's very unique. The creativity of it can be defined as pioneering because nobody else has thought about it, because everybody else is still on the academia or business or scientific or engineering space. And I'm in those spaces as a creative. So it's hard, but the imposter syndrome, it can be a good thing if you don't allow it to rule you, and you just really have to work through it, and I suffer a lot from that, but as you say, persistence.
Will you say that the way we prepare people for careers is actually creating problems? Because it looks like for you, it was just fortunate that you had this foresight, but not so many people have it. Even if they have, the way they go through their studies, they are being so much channeled into thinking art and not thinking entrepreneurship in art, not thinking art as applied in engineering or art as applied in other areas of the economy. And as a result, when the role of being an artist, being on stage, is not possible because of circumstances like these ones, then there is not anything else but just you switching off. So you are basically saying that we have to look at the way we prepare people to live their careers, because there has to be a practical way that their careers become relevant to other areas other than just the sector that they are confined to.
Love that. And you know what they're saying right now, with Sam, with George Devesh? These multi-billion corporations are saying to their workforces, be more creative, be more innovative. That's what's lacking in our businesses today. And for me, it's mind-blowing that now they bring in, external people to, bring in creativity into their workforces or diversify or be innovative in their workspaces. So for me, it's such a crucial element of creativity in all spaces of society, as you said, Sam. Excellent.
And as Africans, we are naturally creative, but it has been suppressed.
Hlubi, you were referring to yourself as a sore thumb in your MBA class. I would put it to you that to be a really good leader, one of the traits is to have people with skills that you don't have around you and to motivate and lead them so that the team collectively will aspire to higher goals. So you're in a good space. You actually, the one person there, the sore thumb that you say is actually for me a good leader. You can inspire the rest of those engineers, myself included, and lead people rather than just be a sore thumb. You're actually the one that's the glue now to lead. So one of the qualities of a good leader for me is that have people around you strong in their own way and motivate them to push this team better and make them go forward. One of the things as well that George, you also alluded to is one of the things I wanted to chat with Hlubi about today as well. Future CEOs, your brainchild, but already 10 years old, a nonprofit organization looking at uplifting entrepreneurs, inevitably society, because for me, that's how you unlock the challenges that society faces. Can you tell us more about that organization of yours?
With pleasure. That was where my entrepreneurship passion, awakening, putting actually what my grandmama taught me into fruition. It wasn't only my brainchild, Devesh, it was actually my business partner, Gareth Armstrong. So it started off initially, the foundation, the seeds were on some, we saw that after undergrad, after you've done your undergrad, our people, our youth are still not employed. They still cannot get jobs. So that's how we started it, that we wanted these kids who have fallen through the cracks, because of lack of employment, yet they are educated. What can we do about that? So we put together, and it started on a platform of Gareth Cliff, which was podcasting, whereby we brought in thought leaders, innovators, change makers, CEOs, power women, and we actually divided future CEOs into those segments. So it was startup of the week, it was power women, it was future CEOs, it was thought leadership, and we brought over, and this was a spanning of over 5 years. So basically, I've interviewed over podcasts over 600 beautiful and inspiring and magnetic individuals who are really making space because they think differently and they act differently, and they can inspire high potential young people into the entrepreneurship space. What I love about being an entrepreneur and why I differentiate myself, George and Sam and Devesh, as being a social entrepreneur, and both have equal weight and equal worth. Entrepreneur, and correct me if I'm wrong, gents, entrepreneurs, we try to solve a problem. We're always trying to solve problems or find solutions in our societies. And being a social entrepreneur, which is the root of my art, it has its roots in justice. I'm not just trying to solve problems. It has to be a contradiction to the social injustices of society. As I said, both are equally important, but I align myself more to social entrepreneurism. So future CEOs, when I say it's the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, it was the power of that network and the power of the network that I had of being on a soapy, which showed George and Sam throughout Africa. That's what Isidingo did for me. It wasn't just shown in South Africa. People were watching it in Ghana. When I go to Ghana, people like Nandipa. When I go to Swaziland, when I go to Lesotho, people like Nandipa. That is so humbling. So do you realize the access that I have just because of the trust of a character, not even Hlubi, of the character that I have with the African people because of that role. So I've used that. Hence, I come back to social sciences and the humanities. That has opened up doors for me. God has opened up doors for me that no man can close because of that role. So I've used that as an entrepreneur, and hence my entrepreneurship work. And Devesh will talk about the other NPOs and NGOs that I work with that are in the diaspora. And that's where my legacy lies.
Wow. I just love the way you're so intentional about these things. I can imagine those young people that are sitting in your class going through your entrepreneurship interventions, but they're referring to themselves as the future CEOs. I mean, that's for me, it says it all. It means you're aiming at the ultimate. Because if you are becoming an entrepreneur, ultimately you become the CEO of your own organization. So that must be very inspirational. Tell us a little bit about that. How is this name, future CEOs of your organization, selling itself out there when you pop up and say, I will want you to be part of our program offered by future CEOs? That sounds like a program, but it's the name of an organization.
That is such a beautiful question, Sam. I think now more than ever in these tough economic times of a global pandemic, the future CEO brand is just so magnetic to so many people because that's exactly what people need right now, is a sense that we still can claim and have possession and have ownership of a positive and prosperous future, no matter how bad it is, no matter how bad it looks, that as an African Black child, yes, we're highly apathetic right now, but we can claim and have a stake in the futures that we can create on our own. But I'm highly collaborative, so I always believe in working with people. I believe in shared value, Devesh, that it's not just about the profit, and we all need the money for our businesses to be sustainable, yes, business 101. But at the end of the day, I believe that the shared value concept is that we can make positive change in our communities that we serve, in which our business operates. So future CEOs is just, when I say it's the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, from all those people that we brought in, for it being on a podcast, and you know the lifespan of a podcast, it's forever. That has given me the network, and I love the word network, of meeting people like you, of creating and being part of, on a board level, of other African businesses, and really creating an intentional a business that is not about me, that it's about a legacy that I'm leaving behind, that I'm not spoon feeding people, that I'm giving people, and it's business tools. I'm giving people tools to make their own decisions for their unique situations. And that's what Future CEOs is all about. We're not trying to fast track people's career. We're just giving insights and people's stories. And I'm a storyteller at heart. And when we talk about our businesses, when you talk about your business as a story, that's when you capture people. That's when you capture your investors. That's when you capture collaborations, because we want to hear the story. That's the human side of what we're trying to do.
Excellent. You know, one of the things that I really love about Africa is the richness that we have. I love going out into the wild and you see your lions, your lionesses. And so I saw the name lioness of Africa. And I said, I must ask Hlubi to tell me more about that because I'm crazy about wildlife. But a lioness, let me tell you guys, there's nothing cleverer and more determined than a lioness. So, hey, tell me more about that.
With pleasure. People always ask me, Hlubi, what's your spirit animal? I think. And as you said, Sam, it came to me just as my art did. A lioness, the traits are a lioness. They're protective. They are the hunters. And they operate as a pride. It's a very systematic animal, which their survival is because they're part of a pride. And that's the power of what we do, is that we are a pride of women. And we hunt in packs. And we take care of our cubs. And that's who we are as humans, lionesses of Africa. So it's women entrepreneurs, and of course, lions are African, the ultimate African trait. We are Lionesses of Africa, which is a network of over 1.5 million women entrepreneurs and the African diaspora. So that's a lot of women to do trade with. That's a lot of women to do business with. And that's exactly what we want. We want the African trade, keep it in-house. And obviously, because of the global pandemic, businesses have come down to its knees. And we've created a portal called Lioness Business Unusual. So we're doing everything, Devesh and Sam, virtually, whereby it's about mentorship skills. It's about development programs with Sam. It's about managing your finances, the big F. It's about support structures. It's about insights, and it's about advice, and delivered at scale, which is what we need. And I proudly can say that I've been part of the network and as a Southern African ambassador for over 6 years, and that's where I want to be. It's also wonderful because of the kind of entrepreneurs and the women I meet for business opportunities. And the resources are invaluable, and who I can align myself with and refer people with. Because as business, it's not who you are, it's who you know. So that's Lionesses of Africa, a very, very powerful women entrepreneur network in the African continent.
Thank you, Hlubi. Thank you, George. We like to talk also about challenges in the sector. And of course, you are ambassadors for a few organizations, multinational organizations, brand ambassador for the UN Food Program. And you also spoke of the ambassadorship of the Lionesses of Africa. COVID at the time has had profound impact on people's lives, livelihoods, futures. What has been your experience in the entertainment industry and with the broader community that you've been involved in?
Because of COVID, Devesh, unemployment, starvation, mental health issues, depression, suicide, you name it. And for me, as a creative, it's worrying because it's through lockdown that we found healing and comfort through art. It's through music. It's through reading. It was through poetry. Look at your books, Putsam. It was the writers. It was the musicians. It was the films we were watching during lockdown as a form of escapism. So when artists are going hungry and literally starving, like literally, I'm at a loss for words that that people don't realize the value and the worth and the importance of arts in our life. In terms of the unemployment is at its highest in South Africa, and that's crippling for our young people. that they don't even bother looking for work again, or the systems of trying to find work are basically so difficult in the process of applying for a job that it's soul destroying. And hunger. WFP, it's the World Food Program. And what I've always believed and said since the beginning of time, once I started as a Goodwill Ambassador, is that I really don't want to be the kind of humanitarian, Sam and George, that encourages a generation of people of people asking for handouts. I just don't see that as a long-term solution. So we try as WFP, and I'm saying WFP specifically, of finding, Devish, scientific and through engineering ways of feeding people and innovative ways of feeding people that it can be sustainable, that they don't have to wait for maize meal bags to be dropped off from airplanes to be able to feed themselves and their families. So for me, it's all about sustainability. It's always thinking about long-term and people owning their dignity and their pride, with Sam and with George. I do not want to create a generation of people waiting and asking for handouts. In the sense that's the same for Sunshine Cinema, which we can touch on. And George and Sam, that is a solar mobile network where we showcase African cinema in a cinematic environment through renewable energy. And for me, what we're doing, our most recent initiative, is empowering young kids from rural and peri-urban Southern Africa and training them to be media and impact professionals so that they can make their own money, so that they can be employable. And that's what I'm trying to, that is basically, I want that to be the highlight of my career, to give people tools that they can take care of themselves.
You know, this is so profound. From a coaching point of view, I always reflect and try to travel back to the beginning of humanity, how humanity used to survive crises of the of those days. And I'm wondering, why is it so difficult in these days that when we default into a crisis, we are not able to be fully present with what that crisis is doing to us? That we are not able to say, this is actually a moment of reflection, going back into our inner strength and thinking about what tomorrow is going to be like as a result of this crisis. And then we just go in the mode of, give me, I'm helpless. I'm not saying that shouldn't be the case, that we help people. But one thing you are sharing with us here is that you are not 100% helpless. You can actually preoccupy yourself with what tomorrow is going to bring. And what I hear you saying is, yes, I don't just want to go around helping people survive. I want to get involving people in the hope of the future and do something for themselves while they're busy asking assistance with food and drink and everything. And that for me is very profound, because if we don't package these grants with self-help solutions, we are forever going to build a society of grant recipients. Grant for me is something that should transition people into some position where they are able to no longer being recipient of grants, but the creators of other people's solutions. You are so 100%. As a coach, that speaks to me. And not that I'm perfect, but I'm just feeling that that's what we are there for, George, as coaches, to say to people that you actually have it within yourself to find out the solution while you are still struggling at the moment for the future.
If I can just add on to what Sam has just said, I'm conscious of time, but I've just published an article in which I said that coaching is going to be so powerful in Africa to release what's here, what we have all have. We have the power to change things, but we need to unlock that. And how do you unlock that? That is where the power of coaching comes in, to talk to those young people, to get them to have the confidence and belief in themselves. So I'm really, truly supportive of what Sam is saying and very, very supportive of what Hlubi is doing.
You know what, George and Sam and Devesh, for me, what I found as a 43-year-old Black woman, I do not align, and I intentionally made this decision. I don't want to align myself and waste our precious time on initiatives or anything that has not got legacy, empowerment, transformation, and sustainability attached to it. Because for me, that's short term. And I'm a long range person. Yeah, it's hard, but I'm patient and I'm willing to work for long-term rewards. And that's a hard thing to do in a society that is instant gratification, but it has to be transformative. It has to be a generational wealth. It's not for me with Sam and George. It's for my kids and my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids. And it has to be empowerment. Those are all.
Will you say that the drive and desire to leave legacy, that's equivalent to that being your purpose in life? Or is there something else that
I would rather say, knowing Hlubi as well, that her heart, her passion, she's been doing whatever initiative she's been doing, driven by her heart, her feeling, her passion. And that in itself gives you a legacy automatically. Doesn't have to be a massive legacy, but if you put your heart and passion into something, that will automatically build into a legacy. Often you get people who target the legacy, and usually that legacy is wealth generation, but they seldom even reach that because the heart and the passion is not into it. Often as well, people say they're starving, like you also alluded, Hlubi, that people feel helpless. But a person like yourself comes along. Those qualities which I deem as a good leader is been lacking in the least sense in South Africa, where the leadership actually wants people to be desperate, wants people to be helpless. So there's a legacy for them is this longevity of people feeling helpless. And also what you mentioned, Sam, we seem to have lost the inherent nature of a human being, that of survival, that of being driven by whatever needs to happen around you. The leadership we've been exposed to has been conditioning people to feel helpless, to be demanding, to ask. When you feel hungry, you ask and ask and ask, and you're given a handout, but just enough so that you can come back and ask again.
I'm actually involved in a reflection process. I don't call it a book writing, because I don't want that pressure of people saying, when are you releasing this piece of work? And I'm at a chapter at the moment, very much at the beginning, where I'm writing about my growing up in a small village in deep rural Skukuneland. And the subsection of that chapter is what I call the village economy. And I base that on the river that runs past the village, and how that river was actually the nerve center of our village economy. And I grew up with families growing vegetables and owning orchards along the river, because the river was supplying us with food. Then I didn't really realize that that was a typical of a village economy. People talk about the kibbutz concept in Israel, which used to be an agricultural community that have now grown up into many other sectors. But when they describe it, it takes me back there. And then I was thinking that when I go back there and I look at what has totally disappeared, I'm like, wasn't there anybody somewhere who will say, this can't disappear. We can change and do everything else, but this can't be to a point that we needed to do against those government officials who were coming to cut our land into pieces. Say this one is now belonging to the government. You can't graze here. You can't cultivate here. You can't do this. We just almost like just let go. It's as if it wasn't really a critical part of who we are. And to a point where I don't know when last did I really cultivate with my hands, that little garden that I'll go every day, cut spinach, tomatoes, beetroots, carrots. And now we are saying that we call it farming. Now people must do farming so that we secure food for the nation. Whereas that was really something that we just grew up naturally doing. I know I'm digressing a little bit, but I was just going back again to the point of what we used to do to cater for our needs and not wait for somebody to say, I see you are helpless. Here it's a package. Go and cook. Hlubi, what is your reflection on that?
I just wanted to add, Sam, I don't see it as a digression. I actually see it as a point in strengthening what I was saying earlier about what makes a good leader. The challenges you face that you've outlined is because of the poor leadership that we've had. People have been instilled and conditioned to feel that way that they're feeling, and they move away from a river, for example, that you mentioned in Egypt, is another fundamental problem which we still face. People complain about how far the river is to go and get water. But I ask, why did you build a house so far away from the river? But your input, Hlubi?
But Sam and Devesh and George, once again, it comes to me, what you're saying, that you can describe me as persistent and resilient, and intentional. But the flip side of that, and what we've got to realize, and where the poor leadership really comes in, is that empathy and sympathy and compassion are just as important as the flip side of that exact leadership. And just as much as I'm feeling, come on, Hlubi, we can do this, it's okay sometimes not to be okay. It's okay to take those points of reflection and sit by that river and take in the natural beauty and the power and the strength and the spiritual resources of those times, but Sam. And that's what we've lost as abantu, as people today, that you don't always have to be this source of strength and conviction and direction and powerful leadership. Authentic leadership creates that room for reflection and pausing and intuition and accessing our ancestors, guys, and that realm of the world that we have completely ignored, especially in these times. I think that's also very much an important leadership quality. And that as much as we have these visions and these goals and these strategies and these big dreams, downtime and rest and slowing down and pausing and family and resetting and recalibrating are just as much as the process to success.
There is a saying in my language, the Speli language, and I will say it and then I'll explain it. And I agree, it follows on the point George has
I love it.
Yes. Just mentioned about the poor leadership. It says that Khoshi Gaibushe Arena. Basically, what they mean is that the king doesn't really tell you what you need to do in his way of leading his people. He leads you into action yourself. So just to say that I think we need to be careful, and just coming back to the point Divesh has mentioned, that we don't have an external locus of control when we talk about the leadership gap. That as if we are okay and there is a leadership there that is failing us and there's nothing we can do about it. So what we are asking for is that let there be the space for every one of us to fill that space and lead through action to achieve what we are allowed to achieve. So I think the time has come where we see leaders as our leaders, that we ourselves put them there and question ourselves, why do we allow this type of people to be the leaders if they are not good leaders? What are we doing about it? Because it can happen that tomorrow I'm elected and then I do the same. So I think as much as we want people, once they are appointed into leadership, we need to hold them accountable by asking them to give us a space to help them lead us the way we want them to lead us. I think it's a very, George, Divesh, I think we need to, maybe we can bring Hlubi back and with a few other thought leaders to really look deeper into this issue of leadership, own it first and say it all sits within me. If we can allow people to mobilize, so many people to go and burn down the only properties we have in our own view community, and wait for the SAPS to come and chase them away, and we sit there and we just didn't even see it coming. That for me says to me that saying that in my language, that we did not realize that we have actually left the spaces unoccupied, and hence the type of things will happen. And then we wait for the so-called leadership to come and sort it out.
But Sam, just on that note, I'm in the business, and I say this with authority. I'm in the business of creating leaders. Me, I don't necessarily saying I want these people to follow me. I do my thing. I live my life. I heal myself, and for me, I'm in a big vacuum of healing. I'm in Hlubi healing project mode in the last 2 years, and the way I heal myself, I'm not saying everybody else, heal yourself like Hlubi. I share how I heal, and hopefully that ignites other people who love me or who see me saying, okay, maybe let me use the tools that Hlubi has used, that she used to heal herself. Maybe I can use those same tools to heal myself. That's one thing about me. As I said, I live a life that a lot of people don't understand, but I'm not here to want followers. I'm here to give people access to my tools that I use to myself so that they can be leaders in their own lives. That's what I'm here to do. That's me.
And that for me is what really is the pinnacle of a good leader. Somebody who takes the people around them and want them to be elevated, even to be higher than the leader itself. So Hlubi, if you would like to share some of your contact details, not necessarily personal ones, but if people are more interested in finding about some of the projects, Sunshine Theatre, the UN Food Program, the Lionesses of Africa, or your general profile, which would then obviously give them information about all the other initiatives that you have.
Firstly, I had a wonderful time. I was a bit like, these gurus, wow. But I shared myself authentically. I hope you can feel that, even if it's virtual. For me, my parting words, Divesh, before I say my social media and where you can contact the various organizations. I believe in trusting the process. Ultimately, at the end of it all, it's a process, it's a journey. And you've got to enjoy the process. And, there's blood, sweat, and tears along the way. It's about trusting the process. And really, I believe we've got a lot of healing to do as people of color. And that's generational. And I found that I think COVID has really given me the time to really focus on that, because I think that's important. To be really the great transformative leader that I want to be, I've got to be okay first, to really bring about dynamic change for our people.
I told you that it is not an interview, it's a conversation.
Our conversation. So I had a wonderful, wonderful time. So to all of you who are listening and who are watching, from me, Hlubi Mboya-Arnold, trust the process. Trust the process. And you can catch me on Lionesses of Africa, and that's on our website, lionessesofafrica.com, and that's sunshinecinema.org. That's the first African solar mobile cinema. futureceos.com. And then me, Hlubi Mboya, you can find me on Twitter. Hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook and on LinkedIn, of course, where I can find Devesh and George and Sam. And thank you for a beautiful, beautiful session. I'll be back for more.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Hlubi, for being our guest and sharing lots of pearls of wisdom and inspiration to our viewers and listeners. And yes, we will try and get you back and bring in some other people who perhaps you can feel again like a sore thumb, but you're an inspiration in being that for the other people around you, and you're a true leader in your own right. Just as well for our listeners and our viewers, if you want to drop some inputs to us, we can be contacted at call center at COMETSA-GOC.com. Our website as well, COMETSA-GOC.com. And also catch us again every first Thursday of the month between 6 and 8 o'clock, usually in the evening. And thank you for listening to our show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Lovely.